Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just going to walk you through Government Spending 101 for Canada. Now, my presentation is only one perspective. I encourage people to go out there to take a look at the government annual reports, whether that's provincial, federal, or municipal, to kind of understand how money is being spent, to kind of ask hard questions of their politicians, whether that's local, provincial, or federal. Here's a little bit about myself. What's driving this presentation a bit is I've got a background in academia. I taught a public finance course through CPA CGA Canada for about 5-6 years. So some of my experience is coming from academia, but I also give you a perspective on the business perspective of how taxation flows through an economy. So what am I going to talk about? I'll talk about what is government spending. I'll talk about social programs. I'll talk about the flow of money. I'll talk about deficits, I'll talk about how you grow revenues, and I'll talk about deficit spending. Now, what are government programs? Well, if you look at a nutshell and you go to different levels of government, they're going to have different meanings. At a federal level, they have federal programs. At a provincial level, they have provincial programs. And at a municipality level, they have municipal levels. Now, what you're seeing here, education and healthcare, they're provincial responsibilities. That's what's going to drive it there. But the federal government itself provides funding to healthcare and social services through government transfers, and I'll get into that. But at a federal level, that's where you're seeing social services, that's where you're seeing old age security. It's paid out of general tax revenue to basically fund those programs. Unemployment insurance, we collect EI premiums, but we have people that need to be on unemployment because of the way the economy and the jobs flow. Welfare, that's getting down to a municipal level when you're starting to talk about supporting people that are in difficult situations. And I've got defense, foreign aid, they're all part of the overall government flow. So if you look here, an annual report for the government, this is what your flow. On the left side is the statement of operations expense side. So when you look at major transfers to people, that's where you're seeing the old age security, income supplements, EI payments. If you look at transfers for government, that's where you're seeing the Canadian Social Transfer that supports post-secondary school education and childcare. Different programs at a provincial level of support, that's where the revenue gets collected. Equalization, this is where we share from the have and have not provinces. So Alberta, Saskatchewan give money into a fund. That fund then gets redistributed to other provinces to support programs like education and healthcare because they don't have the mechanism to raise the revenue to the same level of services. Okay. You'll see in direct program expenses, that's where you get in the military, you get in First Nations, you get into basically foreign aid. That's all part of that. And as you see, overall, Canada spent in 2014-2015 close to $281 billion. So how does the money flow? Well, government has to collect money. That's where you get your personal income tax. That's where you get in corporate. That's where you're starting to see energy taxes, royalty stuff. You're seeing goods and services taxes. That's where they get it from. So the more you tax somebody, the less it has money in terms of, for example, if I tax you more, an income tax is going to reduce your after-tax income, leaves you less money to spend on household expenses, and I'll get into the more specific there. But the flow to a government is revenue collection. And you really can't grow your expenses faster than revenue because it's not sustainable. And this chart kind of shows you last year the government had a pretty strong revenue target of $282 billion, which led us into a surplus. A surplus is a good thing because it eats away at what we call as the net debt, and that's what you're seeing at the bottom right hand corner of this chart. So how do governments expand revenue? Well, they can increase tax rates for personal corporate tax. They can hike consumption, so they're going to introduce new taxes like carbon tax. They can also rely on a stronger economy, so consumer spending drives the consumption tax. Higher corporate profits generate corporate tax. Low unemployment reduces the EI, but means more people are working. Strong exports drives the export economy. Now, running deficits, really what that means is the government's spending more money than it can collect. The problem when you start doing that is you have to be very, very careful when you run deficits, because at some point the private sector has to stand on its own 2 feet. And that being said, if there's not enough slack in the private sector, then what you have is you have a situation where you're constantly providing stimulus and the economy will never get any better. What that is called is Keynesian economics. Now you have to be very careful how you support an economy because it doesn't work if you try to long term overstimulate it, because it won't stand on its own 2 feet. It won't be competitive. Okay, just remember, today's spending and deficits are tomorrow's taxes. So what do tax hikes mean to Canadians? Well, they mean a few things. One, they could lead to foreign direct investment. People yell and scream about that. What that means is companies have goals in terms of returns on shareholders' investment. Taxation reduces that income that goes into shareholder values. Okay? Corporate taxes, when people increase, business increases, they pass those costs over to higher prices. Payroll tax hikes, they reduce the after-tax income, means less money for household expenses. Consumption tax hikes can lead to higher prices, which then means less people are going to spend money on other items. Carbon taxation will add to the cost of retail price, which is not discussed. See, less user fees means less money. Too. Again, I'm taking money away from you. So if we talk about the federal government's action plan, there's 4 quotes here. 2 of the economists say, yeah, it's a good idea. But the underlying theme here is we're in a period of slow economic growth. Okay, that's what it is. We have a demographic shift that's changed. So despite the rhetoric that you're going to hear the different parties talk about at federal, provincial levels, the reality is this. We have slow economic growth driven by a change in demographics. Okay, by overstimulating the economy, all you're really doing is throwing money at a symptom. Unless you target that money to benefit things like exports or transit or self-sustaining projects, all you're really doing is throwing money at a problem. The problem doesn't go away. So that's why you're seeing quotes here from three economists. But the best one is from BMO, and BMO's right. And basically, you can't kickstart an economy strictly by doing stimulus. It just doesn't work. What you have to do is hope for a peaked up demand worldwide that you can support those programs to expand exports. Exports is very critical to Canada's success. Right now we're 25% below exports. What you need to do is be able to expand that capacity. That means adding pipelines. That means adding port expansion. That means looking at different things to help move goods to market. It's one thing to talk about the rhetoric, but the reality is that's what has to happen. Second point is throwing money into clean technology, which is not proven, doesn't mean it's viable. And when you need to do any sort of business, it has to be viable. Okay, so the reason why I want to highlight this stuff, because it's very important as you people discuss the issues facing Canadians, that you understand the whole gamut and understand the flow of money and understand that targeting spending has to be done in a proper way that makes the most sense. Thank you.